Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for today's session. Today's session is around a modern phone system and ultimately around how we can help reduce your costs of your existing telephony and future-proof your communications really into the future. My name is Graham Stead, for those of you that don't know me. I'm the Client Relationship Director here at CMI, which really means I'm responsible for keeping our clients sort of informed of technology broadly, how it can be used to the best benefit of the business, and keeping you informed through sessions like these. This is going to be recorded, just to confirm, and we'll make that available after for future reference. And we'll try and keep this to no more than 40 minutes, and we're between 30-40 minutes, but I think closer to 40. What we won't do really is have time for a sort of an open Q&A session at the end, but do please answer your question or ask your questions using the widget on your screens. We do see those, they come through on a report after, and we make sure that we get back to you answering your questions as quick as you can following the session. Brilliant, right, so let's move on. So for those of you that have been on the previous sessions, you know I always like to just confirm what we really are trying to achieve to provide you out of these sessions. So for today, really, there's two aims. First, really being to leave you with a simple action that you can take following this webinar to find out, the cost savings that could be available to you if you move to a more modern phone system. So it's a very simple action we can take, which I'll explain at the end of the session. And throughout, really, it's to give you a better understanding of how a modern phone system really brings resilience and agility to your business. So really, this is talking around all of the non-financial benefits of a modern phone system, which, to be honest, I think the benefits, you should be looking at the benefits of a phone system, not as the financial cost reduction. That to some extent is a cherry on the cake. The real benefit of modern phone systems is all the flexibility and agility that it does provide. Okay, so might seem a little bit of an odd slide to put up. The phone is still a crucial tool. Really, what I'm trying to say there is, it's my sense is really that I think most of us think of the phone as it's something we just live with, all of our lives, and it's that sort of handset type thing that sits in the corner of the desk, and we're all very sort of, I guess, been used traditionally to the phone system being the remit of BT and communication providers, rather than being an IT technology. So I often think within sort of IT, it's really the forgotten tool that we've got. Clearly, voice is a massively important method of communication. That's what we're using now. It's not going to go away. It's the primary method. What we have seen over the last couple of months is video, with everybody remote working and tools such as Teams and Zoom and all those tools that are being used. Video is really coming to the forefront because, of course, that gives you the voice, but also adds that that visual, body language element of it. And those tools are great when you're being able to schedule meetings with people that people are expecting to hear from you. But of course, not all conversations are that way. So we are always going to have to fall back to voice being a primary method of communication. So it really is critical. And if we don't move as business leaders, those responsible for technology in our business, to modern communications, as what we say here, you're just not going to keep up, which ultimately is going to risk you getting left behind and being less competitive, less able to fulfill your clients' requirements, etc. So I just want to sort of position that, because I think, as I say, just to recap, I think a lot of people just think of a phone system as a phone system, don't really sort of have it in their mindset that it's a much more valuable tool than we've just become accustomed to, really. Okay, before we really move on into the guts of the session, those that have been on previous sessions will know that we started 3 weeks or so back, just asking a question, this simple question: how do you feel about the outlook for your business compared to last week? Yeah, is it better, is it worse, or is it about the same? And as we're moving on through the weeks, as lockdown starts to unwind, I just felt it'd be an interesting question to ask, and just sort of sense check, the temperature of the water that's there. We do have we had about 50, 60 people on the webinar last week. We've got less this week, so maybe the poll might be a little less sort of valid, if that makes sense, from a sort of statistical perspective. But let's run it. If you can all just take a moment just to answer, is it better, worse, or about the same for you? And we'll see how those come through. Let me just launch this for you. Okay, so if you just enter and make sure you click the submit button, and it'll come and just say, obviously that's been submitted. And I can see the responses coming through on the screen here. So we'll give it a little time to settle. And as I say, I'll share this after through our sort of LinkedIn channels. So the positive news here actually is that nobody this time is saying it's worse, whereas in the past couple of weeks we've always had about 10–15% saying it's worse. 60% saying the same, and the balance being better. So it's fluctuating around a little bit, but I guess really positive to see that it's not worse for anybody. Excellent. Let me close that survey now, and we'll move on with the rest of the session. Thank you for completing that. Okay. This isn't going to be a technical session. It's not intended to be that. It's very much a sort of a high-level awareness of the options, awareness of what modern telephony is, and therefore the benefits that come off the back of that, and why really you need to be looking to move to these sessions, assuming you haven't already done so, which if you're on this session, I'm assuming you haven't. So broadly speaking, again, without getting techie on you, there are 3 types of phone systems that you're going to have within your businesses. So, do you know which type you have? These things may help you. If you don't, then have a conversation with us. It's very easy for us to find out. So really, we've got what I would call the legacy on-premise PBX, and PBX being that box. Typically used to be a very big BT Nortel type box that would sit in the back of a cupboard somewhere, and effectively that connected you to the public telephone system via a connectivity type called ISDN, which you may or may not have heard about. But primarily the key point here is it's not over your internet, it's over a telephone connection, just very similar to your landline coming into your home, if you're still using traditional sort of landlines, but a bigger, higher capacity line, which is called ISDN. So that's really the legacy system. So if you've got one of these sort of big old boxes sat in the back of a cupboard, and you on your bills you're getting ISDN line rentals and those sorts of charges, you're likely to have a legacy on-premise PBX system. A slightly updated version of that really was where we started to move to VoIP, which was voice over IP, which is really where we started. It started to have the potential to move the voice traffic over the internet rather than over the traditional public telephone system. Now, these still required a box of some description in the office, and we're still classed as an on-premise system. The graphic I've got there is just a sample. It may look like that, it may not. But really, it was just an updated hardware version of the legacy PBX, and it did give you the ability to connect over the internet line to use your calls. But ultimately, it still required that hardware on site, the maintenance of that hardware, the configuration and support, etc., of that hardware. Moving through to what I would call a modern cloud phone system. Key difference here really is absolutely no hardware on your site, in your locations at all, other than the devices, the headsets, the handsets that you use to communicate through. But there's no technology in the server room or back of cupboards anywhere. Don't need to worry about it, and all the connections are always over the internet. So they're really the 3 levels of sort of telephone system that you may have. And what we're going to spend the session talking about is obviously the benefits of modern cloud. So what makes up the cost? Now, clearly, the title of the webinar and the session today was about reducing costs. I've already put my position out there that I don't think the primary reason for moving to a modern cloud system should ever be about cost. That should be a buy benefit. The real benefit is, and the real reason for moving is all the business benefits it brings around productivity, agility, etc., which we'll talk about. But given cost and in our current times, trying to reduce cost, control costs is clearly a high priority for a lot of us. I just want to go through at a very simple level how the cost for the legacy PBX, the VoIP PBX, and modern cloud compared, just to give you a sense. So down the left-hand column here, we've got the different components or different line items effectively that could incur a cost. And again, we've just then applied, where they're applicable or not applicable to the different systems. Without going through the detail of each little box and matrix there, you can clearly see that the highest cost is that legacy PBX. And the reason for that is that you've actually got the PBX system itself, the hardware. Now, that might come on a lease, or you might purchase it through sort of a capex and depreciate it through your profit and loss, depending on how you do that. But it has a cost associated to that typically will come out on a monthly basis, either a monthly lease or the monthly depreciation cost. You've then got the handset devices. You've then got the line rental and the various services. So line rental being things like your ISDN 30 line rentals, your PSTN line rentals. These are things that you'll recognise on your bill if you've got one of these systems. And services like caller ID, call barring, those sorts of traditional BT services that we're probably familiar with. You've then got the maintenance. The maintenance, the hardware warranty or extended warranty on the hardware. The support in order to be able to, if you want a new extension setting up, calling somebody to do that. Call charges, because of course this is going over the public network, so there are still call charges involved, whether they're UK, local, international, calls to mobile, the very typical call charges. User subscription isn't applicable in this model, but you can see, every single one of those line items is relevant and a cost you will incur on a legacy PBX, hence the highest cost. As we move down to the VoIP PBX, it's still all there because it's got hardware. There's the hardware, there's the handsets, there's the line rentals, maintenance, call charges, etc. But they tend to be a little lower just because of the hardware is less costly and just the general configuration and technology that's within that. So, there's still a cost, but, of the three, it's the mid-range. And then, of course, you get to the modern cloud, absolutely the lowest cost. Reasons why? Well, there's no on-premise hardware to worry about. Yes, you're going to have your handsets, your devices, your headsets, etc. So there's still a cost there. There's no line rental. Okay, now strictly speaking, of course, you're going to have the internet line that you need to go out over that you're going to be using. But most businesses are capable or able to share the same internet line that you've already got for your business. So there's no direct cost associated with your phone system. There's no call charges because, of course, it goes out over the internet. Yes, you can have a subscription because it's basically you subscribe to the service per user, and it's simple. So not only is it lowest cost, there's no hidden costs, and it's simple. So really, I just wanted to sort of share that with you, so you sort of, I guess, put some context to why a modern cloud system is a way to reduce cost. I then just wanted to sort of put some, I guess it's less about the numbers you can see in front of you here, but more around the percentage saving, I guess. And I don't want to sit here and say you're always going to save 30%. You may save more, you may save less, but this actually is a real life example with a client that I was working with maybe 6 months or so back. So these are actually their costs from one of their monthly bills of their legacy PBX system on the left. As a business, they're around 80 staff. Now, they're not necessarily all telephone users. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to assume that they are, or certainly I'm going to assume when we put them into a modern cloud model that they are going to have a phone system. So I guess what I'm saying there is actually in this particular example, it's likely that savings will be more than the 30% that I'm showing here. But again, you can see in the legacy PBX, we're really talking about the system and handset. Now, actually, in this example, again, I've put £0 because I'm assuming because it's a legacy system that it's the lease is paid up or it's fully depreciated through the accounts. So that's a best case cost that we've got here. The reality is it could actually be higher because it could be quite a substantial cost in that line. You've then got the various line rentals, the ISDN, PSTN, DDI ranges, maintenance, all the stuff that I talked about in the previous slide, and the call charges. So just over £1,300 a month. Now, if I compare that to a modern cloud system, maybe with one of the partners that we'd work with, I'm going to assume that 70 of the staff there are going to need just a basic subscription. So basic telephony requirements. They're not going to need any sort of extensive conferencing facilities or anything like that. They just need to be able to make and receive calls and the usual phone functionality that you'd expect. So we're going to apply 70 of the 80 staff to that, and we're going to give 10 of the staff, maybe managers, directors, maybe certain functions within the business need a more enhanced subscription. So again, some broad assumptions I'm making here. I'm allowing a small amount for some miscellaneous services, but typically there aren't any, but for the sake of 20 quid, let's put it in. There will be no call charges because that's all included within the subscription. So you can see there that the cost there in this example is reduced down to 30%. So hopefully that now understanding the component parts of a legacy phone system compared to modern cloud and how the numbers, the financial costs apply to those, might give you an idea now, hopefully some context as to how these things help by moving to a modern system. Again, I'm going to just take the point to reiterate, to me, the benefits outweigh the benefit of the cost savings, and again, we'll share that. Okay, just a quick awareness. Some of you may be aware, some of you may not, but BT, who obviously manage all the the traditional legacy phone system, the connectivity, the green boxes at the end of the road. They announced several years back that actually from this year they were going to be no longer able to purchase the lines that enable your legacy. Now that's been moved out a little bit to sort of 2023, but I really can't see that any business purchasing new telephone technology now would actually purchase ISDN technology. But more important here is actually there will be a forced migration. Okay, it's a number of years off, but we are all going to be forced away from our legacy system. So we are going to have to make this move at some point. So I just want to make that aware. Yeah, the time frame is a fair way off, and with everything that's going on at the moment, it's not a priority, but at least you know now. Okay, I'm going to just take some time now just to move on into that legacy to modern transfer, really, and that transition. So what we've got here is just a diagram. I want us to get into the mindset of a telephone not being a telephone. A telephone these days, that voice communication is one part of the jigsaw that is what we would call in the industry unified communications. And we say unified communications because it's all the different communication methods, tools that we have available to us, integrated and unified into a single interface for the user. That's really what we're talking about here. So yes, there's telephony, there's conferencing, there's presence, the instant messaging, and whether you've got the green icon or red I'm busy in your Outlook or your presence software. Collaboration through Microsoft Teams, that co-authoring, sharing documentation, okay, voicemail, unified messaging, mobility, and contact center. Contact center is relevant, and when I say contact center, I don't want you to be thinking of large, several hundred, mass people sitting in a contact center. A contact center, could be 5 people, 10 people. It's our service desk, strictly speaking, is a contact center, and it's got, I don't know, broadly 15 people staff in that. So more around what a contact center is there for. So all these component parts are part of modern communication, which you may hear called unified communications, and the telephony piece is one piece of the jigsaw. I hope that sort of makes sense to introduce that. So let's just look. There's a lot of information here. I'm not going to talk through it all, but really, again, moving from that legacy to modern. So, legacy, again, it was very much that phone handset. It was audio conferencing. So we've all used those conference hubs, whether it's Powwow Now or the other tools that are out there where we dial in, we put a PIN code in, and we can hear multiple people. There was always audio, not video, and email centric. That was how we communicated. Of course, moving to a modern communication, it's much more chat based, instant messaging, and it's video centric. If we need to have a conference call, probably, I was going to say 95%, it's probably more like 99% of the conference calls I'm on these days are video based. That's because we've moved. This is really important. This second point, you're physically constrained by a legacy system because you have to have the handsets within the office to connect to that that bit of hardware in the cupboard. Okay, so when you're remote working, when you're on the train, when you're in a hotel and a cafe somewhere, you don't have access into your phone system, which literally means your clients don't have access to you, other than email and maybe some of the methods. Whereas modern communication, anytime, anywhere, any device, it really is. All you need is your device, your app on your phone, your Bluetooth headset, whatever it may be, your laptop with a soft phone on it, and an internet connection. And that internet connection, doesn't have to be a broadband connection per se. That internet line going into your office could be 4G, 5G. It could actually even run off, slower connections than that. We've talked about maintenance costs. The fourth point there, disaster recovery, really sort of goes hand in hand with the the fact that you're physically constrained in a legacy setup. But if those businesses that have had to, we've all had to go remote working over the last couple of months, those businesses that had a legacy system in place will have really struggled to get access to the phone systems to people working from home. And as I've already said, therefore, clients and suppliers and that whole communication is a nightmare. So, there is no disaster recovery. Now, we're in the situation we're in now because of, the virus. But what if you weren't able to get into your office? If there was a fire or a flood or any of the other traditional disasters that we might consider? Again, a modern communication system just gives you the ability to sort of pick up and work from wherever you need to work for however long you need to work from. There's a number of other things here: analytics, reporting, technical knowledge in order to configure it. I guess second one there from the end, there's no SLAs on a legacy communication system. So, if there's a problem, if it's broken or something, then yes, the engineer may come up the next day or a couple of days, whatever that contract is. But within a modern communication, because it's internet based with lots of data centers, globally around the world, there is a 99.99% availability SLA. Your phone system will always be up. And I've referred to this in the final point there back, there's quite often hidden costs associated with a legacy system, whereas in a modern phone system, it's not. It's all within the subscription. It's all inclusive, no nasty surprises. Very simple. So hopefully, that's not an exhaustive list, but I just want to sort of put some comparison from the legacy to the modern, and then really building on that and really starting to look into how you take advantage of that modern sort of communication system to future-proof your business. And when I talk about future-proofing your business, I am thinking around being able to cope with the situation we're in now. Should we find ourselves back in our office in a couple of months, but in 6 months' time find ourselves back remote working because there's been a spike, whether it's been a disaster, whether it's around your people, processes, retaining talent, all those reasons. There are so many reasons why a modern communication system will help your business in the future. There's 4 or 5 that I've listed down there: productivity, risk management, and some specific reasons. Again, not an exhaustive list, but I think it's really important. So I'm going to just sort of pull out a couple here that I think are really important. So clearly, productivity generally, if you've got access into your phone systems and you can access them anytime, anywhere, any device, clearly that's going to drive productivity. Things like the instant chat, the presence, is somebody available in order to pull them into a conference call if you're on the phone to a client. There's just so much productivity benefits within these modern phone systems that you don't get in legacy, whether that's a sort of a true legacy BT grey box in a cupboard or a more modern version of that. You just don't get it. Clearly, from a business risk management, I've talked about the SLA, so you know it's going to be available. All you need is internet. You imagine in a legacy system, if somebody digs through the cable that is your ISDN, then your phone system is out, and that cable doesn't get fixed immediately, especially with PSTN are involved. Now, you could argue the same if somebody dug through your internet connection in the office, well, your phone system will go. You know, that's valid. And there are things that need to be protected against that. But you know, these phone systems will work over 4G, 5G, other connectivity. So all your device needs is access to the internet. It doesn't have to be access to the internet through the wire coming into your building. So again, a lot more flexibility there. Clearly, the budgeting, being able to true up, true down, and flex based on your requirements, whether you're sort of growing or having to shrink as a business. You can the cost fall in line with that. And regulations, I mean, this is an important point. I mean, there's a number of different regulations out there. For those of you in the finance industry, there's MiFID II, but there'll be plenty of others out there which require you to take certain actions on your telephone calls. So within the financial industry, there's a requirement to make sure the call recordings are kept and retained for periods of time. So that's not impossible in legacy systems, but it's a lot easier and a lot more cost effective and a lot easier to manage in a modern phone system. Agile working, where we are now, we're all sitting, probably at home, unless some of us have been able to return to the office. And as I've talked, you can use this phone system. I'm talking to you now through a Bluetooth headset. I could be doing this call through my app on my mobile phone, maybe on a train. It doesn't matter where I am. Call routing, other configuration. Again, a challenge we've seen with some of our clients is that actually trying to configure call routing, which needed to be changed to reflect new workflows, people's availability, etc. during COVID. It wasn't easy to do in a legacy phone system, whereas in a modern system that can be done. And in some cases, it can just be done at the user level by the user to make sure their calls follow them. Office moves, no problem. Maybe we're not going to be moving offices. There are clients out there clearly are moving offices because it was already planned. But there's a big question about, are we going to need offices in the future? So, if we're not going to have offices, we're going to be more flexible office space. We can't be having those legacy systems. We're going to have to move modern. And of course, a big ability, what I would call project offices. Construction industry is a great example. If you're having to pop up project offices where sites are being developed, or maybe a particular project you're working on with a client where you need to be on premise and you sort of got a temporary location being set up. Simple, just make sure you got the devices, internet connection, and it works. Client experience, I think the one thing I would say, actually, these aren't in any order. And for me, client experience, as you'd expect with my role, is massive. You've got to, your staff have got to be able to provide the level of service they need to their clients. And if voice is a large part of that, and they can't have access to the phone system, or it's limited in their location or the type of device, that's going to impact client experience. Very simple. And equally, now is very topical. How many clients? We've got clients out there with legacy phone systems who have got their clients unable to reach them because they're calling a number that's ringing in the office and nobody's there. They've had to put workarounds in place. And speaking with BT about call forward into mobiles, or that sort of old antiquated way of dealing with a disaster. It just doesn't work these days, and your clients will see that. And that will come through and be a reflection, on the reputation of the business, to put bluntly. But I think another aspect is around the people. People these days, even pre-COVID, as more of our millennials and our sort of the younger generations are moving into the workforce and have lived with technology all their lives, they're expecting the business to be in the modern era, to provide them with the modern working tools that mean they can be flexible with the hours they work or how they work, when they work. If you're not able to provide that, you're going to really struggle to attract talent in the future. And if you're not able to provide that, you're going to lose talent that you've already got. And COVID is only exaggerated that, as we're all starting to experience a different work-life balance, a different way of working. That's going to become more and more of an issue for everybody. Analytics and some other bits and pieces in there, are important, and I've got a little slide on that later. So why don't people move to a modern workplace? It can say it saves you money, and it brings huge benefits. So on the face of it, it seems like a no-brainer, isn't it? Why don't people move to modern work? And all I can think is that there are historical myths out there. Some were valid previously, but no longer valid. So I just thought it'd be a sensible slide to just sort of debunk some of those myths. Poor quality calls is probably it's top of the list for a reason, because that's what we always hear. So that's not an issue any longer. The technology involved, compression technology, I guess configuration, that's not to say that things were configured incorrectly before, but we have much more scope and flexibility around how these systems are configured, and of course the general improvement over the years of broadband internet availability. So poor quality calls is no longer an issue. I've been using a modern phone system for, I'm going to say 5-6 years maybe, and I've been probably through 2 to 3 different providers with that, but I've very rarely had a problem. If I have had a problem, it's probably when I've been at home with my internet connection and the kids trying to Xbox, etc. But in that case, I just jump to my 4G connection. Simple. You don't need a big reliable internet line. Yes, depending on your circumstances, number of staff, how important voice is, clearly if you're running a call center versus somebody that doesn't need to take inbound calls, there's different priorities there. So there may be things you do around having, backup internet lines. Of course there are, but it's never really been the case that you need a big reliable internet line. And I've put down here just an example. Again, without getting too techy, ignore the bandwidth numbers here, but each voice call will typically take about 100k of bandwidth. So if you've got a 10 meg line, that means that line was only used for voice, you'd probably be able to support about 100 concurrent calls. Yeah, so that's just an example, but not having a big enough line is not a reason these days. And again, there's some clever stuff we can do technically with the configuration to protect the voice on those lines. Switching is a hassle. Absolutely not. And it's even more not a hassle, because we'll do it for you. Yes, there'll probably be some things we need to, information we get around from you around, do you want to change your hunt groups, your call routing and configuration like that, to take the opportunity to do some of that stuff. But it's so easy. We moved to our new provider probably 2-3 weeks ago. There's a bit of work around because we took the opportunity to adapt the call routing, as I was just talking about, because of sort of the BTA CMI acquisitions. It was a sensible time to just change some stuff there. So there's a bit of work that was involved, but it just happened. We got told it was happening on Friday, whatever it was, and it happened. So it really isn't a hassle. It's not secure. There's 2 bits to this. It runs over the internet, so your internet should be secure because your data and everything, the rest of your business is running over it. So if it's not secure for that, then it's not going to be secure for phone. But that's not because you're using a VoIP modern phone system. It's because you haven't got the right security in place in the first place. The second part of this is that VoIP telephony, became, a bit of a target for fraud. People jumping onto your system and making calls to premium numbers and you getting the bill. One of the huge benefits of modern cloud is you get protected against that, so you don't have that risk. You can't keep your numbers, simply not true. I've kept my same direct dial number through 3 different phone systems over the last 3 years. They just port across, and the savings are just a gimmick. Well, I think I've hopefully demonstrated that that's not the case. Now, there is either a saving or there isn't. There's no wool to pull over your eyes. Okay, let's move on to again, we talked about devices. I really just want to flick through a couple of final slides here, just to for awareness more than anything. But there is flexibility. We're all probably used to using, well, we are used to using traditional handsets. Increasingly people don't use handsets. It's Bluetooth or potentially wired headsets, soft phones, apps on your phone, on your mobile phones. So you've got a lot of options. And actually, I think I saw some stat recently that I think it's about 60-70% of new phone systems do not go in with a handset. They're going in with headsets. So that's broadly how things have moved. And the point being, you can seamlessly move between these. If I was in the office, for example, on my headset, I have a Bluetooth headset, so actually I can wander around the office as I'm talking. I'm not constrained to my desk. But if actually then the call went on a little bit and I need to go out, to drive to a meeting, for example, I know this is a bit old days, isn't it? But I can just transfer that to my Apple phone, the app on my phone. I could do that, and then obviously Bluetooth into the car, and I'm through. I talk to soft phones through my PC, so I haven't used a handset, pick the thing up and punch the numbers for I don't know how many years. But there are different use cases. But the point I want to move is that actually you can transition between these, and even more importantly, you can transition between these between calls if that's actually something that becomes needed. How many of us had that frustrating meeting room setup? We're going into a meeting room, we want to use voice or video conference, and we just can't get things set up. We can't get our laptop paired with the TV. We don't know what channel to set the TV to. All that stuff that just makes it frustrating. Well, one of the other benefits of these phone systems is you can have a meeting room setup. Now, I'm not going to go into the technicalities of how that works, but in essence, you walk into the room, you plug a PIN code into the device, for example, that's an iPad or something that's sitting there, as in sort of that bottom right screen image, and it works. It's as simple as that. So it just makes that I guess that interaction, that user experience a lot better. Now, use of meeting rooms in the future with offices, yes, that's a question, I guess. And then really the final slide I just want to touch on from phone systems specifically is around the analytics and the contact center. There is so much more reporting and analytical information about our modern phone system. Even at the basic level, there's so much more. As you go up into some of the contact center, much more advanced subscriptions, then that really gets quite in depth and can help identify training, coaching requirements. It's even things like speech analytics, and this blows me away. The demo I saw probably 6 months or so back, of course, the voice is converted into data, and because it's converted into data, that can be analysed, by speech analytics, and you can configure that then, for example, to pick up on the tone of the conversation. If it's a client service type call, it can pick up on type of words that represent anger, frustration, the tone of the voice. It will identify that and can then flag that or action that in some way to identify, or even just put a client satisfaction score to the call. Okay, so you don't need to be letting people fill in surveys or anything. It's amazing what some of this sort of new artificial intelligence, I guess, technology is bringing. So it blows my mind away, and I'm used to some of this stuff. Okay, I'm conscious on a couple of minutes maybe left, so really just how can we help you? I'm hoping now that we've explained at a high level the different type of systems, so you may understand what you've got if you didn't already. You understand some of the sort of the constraints and frustrations and issues with the legacy, and why you really need to be moving to modern. So how can we help you? Well, really, it's very simple. All we'd ask you to do, and I will follow up this with an email to each of you, all we'd ask you to do is send us a copy of your latest bill, and if you do that before 31st of July, we will make sure that we give you a cost savings analysis of what your potential cost saving will be, and we'll also give you a free voucher, or a voucher for free setup. So that means we can transition you from your existing system into a modern phone system free of charge. Okay, and then there's obviously just the subscription, ongoing cost that you're incurring now, that you'll be incurring with a modern phone system, and that voucher will be valid for a year. There's a little caveat there. So I hope that's a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, what is there to lose? Send us a copy of the bill, and we'll see if we can save you money. If we can save you money, great, but you're also going to get all the benefits, and we're going to get you there free of charge. I hope that's pretty compelling. So I'll send you an email shortly after this webinar. And final slide really is just to let you know about the webinar for next week. We're really going to focus on business continuity, which is something we're hearing from our clients. Really is something we want to you're really keen to learn about in the context of the new world we're going to be moving towards. So how will a modern workplace massively reduce disruption to your business? So it's about agile working, productive working, resilient workplaces, resilient technology. So that's next Thursday, 21st. Newsletters, as usual, going out this afternoon with the registration, and we'll obviously share the registration details, etc. next week by our account managers, etc. So rattling through because I think I'm bang on time. I hope that's been useful. Please, share a copy of your bill. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. I just even if you're in contracts or so, share it with us. We may be able to help you identify some savings that you can go and talk to your existing providers with. That's not a problem at all. We're here to help. Register for next week's webinar. And finally, from me, thank you. Have a good day. We'll share the recording as usual through the newsletters on our YouTube channel, and look forward to seeing many of you next week, or speaking with many of you next week. Many thanks.